Welcome to Containerized Conversations, where we try to containerize our conversation. I'm Jesse Caffarelli.
And I'm Josh Warhurst. Thanks for tuning in as we dive into some of our favorite topics, one containerized thought at a time.
So on our last episode, we were talking about AI because now we're just an AI podcast now. And so in this episode, we're going to talk even more about AI.
You can't fight the tide, right?
AI, you can't live with it and you can't live without it. A new saying. But all right, so in this new episode, the last episode we were talking about different things, but we started tripping on the idea of AI and where it should be and where it shouldn't be. And I wanted to talk about it, but I couldn't. Because you know what, Josh? You know what really grinds my gears? You know what really, really grinds my gears? It's when I call a hotel to book a hotel booking. And I get on the phone with someone who sounds real, but isn't actually real. And so like just recently we had to book a hotel block, for like a wedding that we're going to be going to. Yeah. And you can't book it on the block through the AI or through online. You have to actually call the hotel. So we called the hotel, we got the recording, and you're like, oh, you can do this booking online, just blah, 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 blah. And we're just like, no. Real person, please. And the AI was like, oh, I can help you. And I'm like, are you AI? And it was just like, ha 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 ha. I could do anything to help you if you just tell me your needs and I could assist you. I'm like, give me a real person. Literally fought with this thing for like 5 minutes until it finally transferred.
Can you sort a linked list? And they're like, oh, yeah. Sure. Do you want bubbles? Hold on.
It finally got it to transfer me. And then when it transfers me, now I'm on hold for like 40 minutes because, of course, I'm just assuming that they've gotten rid of like half the real people now because AI has helped them improve their numbers so they don't need as many people.
Right.
And that is a perfect example of where AI should not be. We should not be getting rid of our customer service folks and replacing it with AI. And that's the thing. It's like, all these like C-levels will post all these great numbers about how they were able to like get rid of half their customer service team because AI handles all the calls and look, like it's handling every single call. But how many people, like how much revenue did they lose because people were just frustrated that they couldn't talk to a real person?
There was this guy, and I hate mentioning stories like this without having all the numbers and figures in front of me. Yeah. But you have to believe me on this one. There was a guy who was like known in a lot of businesses. This was like maybe like 20 years ago because he would kind of come in and he would fire half the staff. And he would recommend firing half the staff and be like, in the next year, you will make, twice your profit, right? Because, you won't have all these people and you'll be, you'll still have the same kind of income being generated, right?
Yeah.
And for a lot of these companies, this felt really good in the short term, right?
Yeah.
In the next year, it was fine. In the next 5 years, the company was out of business because they had gotten rid of all their R&D people. They had gotten rid of all the people that like actually made the ship work. And the goodwill that the company had was the thing that made them survive that 5 years.
Yeah.
But after that, like they just had no goodwill left, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you can have the short-term profitability and long-term disruption, right? And destruction, right? Like the company is no good anymore. Yeah. I think that's where a lot of this AI stuff is headed for a lot of companies, right? Yeah. They've kind of short-term, they say, this is a great choice. Yeah. Long-term, I think it's going to be really poor for a lot of companies, right? Yeah. Kind of like, this is a bit of a tangent, but like how many people write COBOL anymore, right?
Yeah.
600 people. Like there's nobody that writes COBOL anymore.
Yeah.
And, if you want it, like there's a certain point where you say, oh, do we go and migrate off this stuff or do we take this because it works?
Yeah.
And I feel like this is a weird analogy, but like we're going to be at a situation with AI and with even in software development that's going to look like COBOL, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In 20 years they're going to be like, can anybody write code anymore? Can
Yeah.
anybody
Yeah.
read code anymore?
Yeah.
Oh, you got rid of every junior person, right?
Yeah.
And half the other people retired, so the only people now that actually read and understand code are 600 people. Like,
Yeah. 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 Hey, I mean that's job security right there.
yeah, for us, for what about our kids, right? We have
Yeah.
kids.
Okay,
uh
so that was one example of like a place where AI just goes terribly wrong. But I want to balance this out with the positives because again, we're AI people now. We got to embrace it. But I've seen at least 3 articles now where medical research companies have started using AI, and with that, they have been able to discover things they have not been able to discover before. This is a perfect, great example of where AI can help us in the huge long run. And it gets back to the previous episode that you were talking about using AI as a tool, and not like, as a crutch or I don't know. I forgot what the point of it was, but
I, I I was more making the point that like when it comes to the things like art, right?
mm, mm,
Um
yeah.
and we've talked about efficiency versus uh
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, just blindly churning stuff out versus actually putting intent into it, right? But
yeah.
like, in this company, one of them now, after I did a super deep dive, they didn't fully use AI. They built out like a tool using AI, but it's still kind of cool. They were able to sort through a bunch of proteins they weren't able to sort through before because there's just way too many for like the human eye to catch. But
Mhm.
with the program, they were able to catch a protein that works just like diet drugs, that can work uh just like GLP-1 but without the side effects because
Mhm.
it's not like a chemically made shot, it's an actual protein that attacks the brain, or that covers like the brain receptors. But that's a good example, but there was like 2 or 3 other articles I've read, and it's only because of AI where we were able to make those discoveries.
I
So,
think one of the hard things though right now, and again it comes back to that whole companies are looking for money,
mm,
right? And when they chase the money, they kind of have to where everybody's throwing money to AI right now. And so I think
yeah.
a lot of times people will say, "Oh yeah, we're using AI in our product." And you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"No, you're not. The only AI
Yeah.
that you have in your
Yeah.
product is that like your developers are using AI to make the product. But like you don't
Yeah.
actually have AI integrated, but it doesn't matter because there's a lot of people that don't know the difference, right? There's a lot of people, for instance, that made their money in oil. And if you talk to them about the technical pieces, like, I don't
Yeah.
want to hear it. Just tell me about how AI has fixed your problem, right?
Yeah.
And so there will be a lot of people nowadays that say AI, our company is an AI company. Our company
Yeah.
uses AI to do X or Y.
Yeah.
And it might not be true, and I feel like there's a lot of noise there, right?
Yeah.
Um, on the other hand, AI as being especially like LLM AIs, right? The stuff that we're using to do work. Um, I mean, they are good at pattern recognition, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And probability, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of applications out there.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of documentation, for instance, right? You talk about like medical research. There's a lot of medical research that just never has been read, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of
Mhm.
papers
Yeah.
that have been created and 5 people have read, right?
Yeah.
10
Yeah.
people have peer reviewed it. It's not a
Yeah.
big thing. But if you put all this stuff together, you can potentially make links that you haven't made before, right? I
Mhm.
think there
Yeah.
is power there. Um, but at the end of the day, like I kind of do feel better about a human looking at me and checking off that
Yeah.
I'm fine, right?
Yeah.
Because a computer can say, "Hey, you're fine." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"You don't know that."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
even if you believe that, I don't know if we're ever going to get to a point where a computer says, "Oh yeah, this is definitely right," and I totally
Yeah.
believe it, right?
Yeah.
But if a human stares me in the eyes and says, "You're fine, you don't need to come back here for a
Yeah.
year," I feel good about that
Yeah. Yeah.
in a way that
Yeah.
I don't think a computer can.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, and and that's the other thing I was talking about with somebody the other day is how, I see our industry going in one direction with using AI when there's a different direction we could have gone in that I wish we did go in. And this is like a really good example of using AI poorly versus how we could use AI. So I talked about in the last episode, Hux, which is auto generating podcasts,
Mhm.
right? And again, I do like using it because it will go find papers that I might not be able to sit down and read, give me a quick audio overview of it, and then if I can want to click into it, I can. But and then we kind of tripped on like the idea that that's probably how things are going to work in the future. Like there's going to probably be a kids channel where every single episode of something is just auto generated, tailored to the kid. And so yes, like that is the generation. It sounds like we're going in that direction, which is auto generating content for people, which is sad because if we actually did it in a different way, right? Think about this. Like, and it's going to sound like some companies do this, but let me explain a little bit here. So just like this podcast thing, right? This is auto generating podcast based off of news that I want to listen to. But hypothetically speaking, there is probably a podcast that someone has recorded about the news that I want to listen to. It's just I can't find it easily.
Mhm.
Right. And yes, there are algorithms out there that are supposed to suggest us content, but I think those are all broken. Those seem like they're the one, whoever's paying the most is getting like suggested to me. Like
Right,
there's
kinda like Google search, right? You know that
exactly.
there's a weighted bit to the people who pay money, right?
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
first results you're gonna see are gonna be the people who paid money to be there,
Yeah.
right? Or
Oh,
the people
exactly.
who, at the very least, have paid Google, have an account, and have optimized how their entry is gonna come up, so it's gonna come up. Even
Yeah.
if they haven't paid direct money, they're
Yeah.
they're gaming the system, right?
I mean, another good example is music. Right? Like I pay for Spotify. I have Spotify suggest me music all the time, but it's all like the top 200 songs. Now, and then just recently, or not just recently, but as I've started to get into records, I like want to buy records from people that are not really well known. I'm finding myself having to peruse Bandcamp manually. I don't know if you've heard of that website, but like it stinks because what I've discovered is there's so many great artists on there that I'm like, why hasn't any of their music ever been suggested to me? And, some of them aren't on Spotify. I get it, but some of them are. Why hasn't that been suggested?
I
I've been
mean,
listening to Spotify for years and they've been out for 5 years. So where's the breakdown?
but I do
Where
think that this is one of those places, right? If you're talking about medical research, right? Like there's probably like 100 people in the world who are like super savants when it comes to medical research and can
Yeah.
point you to the right thing, right?
Yeah.
It's just there's not that many people who like I don't want to say care, right? But there's not enough people that like really have absorbed all the information
Yeah.
when it comes to medical research. But music, right? I feel like
Yeah.
this is one of those places where like the answer was solved in like the 70s when they had record stores, right?
No,
Like
but
you
but
you
no,
go
no,
to
no,
somebody and you say,
stop.
"Hey, I like Led Zeppelin. I like the
Yes.
Beatles. I kind
But
of
that
like the
requires me to
weird
talk to
stuff.
someone. I don't wanna go
What should
talk to
I?"
someone.
But but I feel like this is one of those places where it's like, "Oh, that's how people found stuff before." They
Yeah,
they talked to people who didn't have all the information, but they
yeah.
had just enough information to like give you something to work with, you
I
know?
get where you're coming from. That lets us get connected. We can meet people, blah, blah, blah. But my devil's advocate counter argument to you is the people that are gonna be suggesting me that are still artists that know people.
Uh-huh.
And meanwhile, in that world where there might have been a great, like, Bob Marley or another hidden gem that just didn't know people, so no one ever found him. And so in this world where I'm talking about, we should use AI to make it more easy to discover people's content. And so that people who are making good content that don't really know a lot of people, they're more easily discovered because AI is able to like slurp up all this, know what my preferences are, and go, hey, because you like similar music to this, here's this random guy that only 3 people have listened to. You might actually like his music too. And I feel like in that world, we can use AI to help us find human generated content, right? Like human made content. Um, and it make it actually easier for people to who don't really know a lot of people to actually have like a faster starting. I don't know. Like maybe it's a crazy idea, maybe it's impossible, but it's just like we're going towards the direction of let's just hand generate all of this stuff when we could go in the direction of like leveraging it as a tool to connect us closer together, you know?
Yeah. I think like where I feel AI is a perfect use is when the thing it's doing is something that humans are bad at doing, right? Like when
Mhm.
I think about code, I think like humans, like we made code over time to be human readable,
Yeah.
but it's not really human readable, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
still kind of messy. And you still, when you look at operations that happen in code, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
like they're like bit instructions. They're like literal like electrical
Yeah.
signals between two pieces. It's you're trying to take all that and make it kind of human readable, and that's what you get with
Yeah.
code. But like AI is good with that kind of stuff because it's kind of weird and it's kind of mechanical and whatever, right? I feel like the places where we don't want AI is the places where just the human experience is good, right? I, you know, for instance, like I don't want to talk to an AI. I want to talk to you. it's this is something where like I don't think you can be replicated with an AI. Maybe I'm wrong. AI when it matters is for doing the things that humans don't like to do,
Yeah.
right? Kind of like code at a really basic level, right? When code gets rid of something that humans really don't like doing,
Yeah.
um, then it's a good use of technology. But like there are things where like the face-to-face interaction, right,
Mm.
is part of the point, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Um, I go back and forth like with restaurants. Do I want a touchpad that I can just order the food and the food comes out of the table with the robot?
Yeah.
Is the point of the restaurant the food or is it the atmosphere, right? How many restaurants have
Yeah.
been where like the waiter is actually a waitress is really good and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was kind of funny in talking to them. Um,
Yeah.
or like you talk to the people nearby at the next table and like
Yeah.
that's part of the experience.
Yeah.
So I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes like the tool aspect of AI is very important, but we need to be
Yeah.
kind of judicious about.
Yeah, yeah. Like another good example, uh, having AI auto generate or auto translate languages for us versus using AI to help us learn a language so that then we can communicate with them in the native language. Right?
Mhm.
That's another good example. One takes away the human experience, the other one enhances or embraces the human experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, learning is one of those things where like found that it is easiest to learn for me when I'm in a social experience, right?
Mm.
Like a physical classroom is actually the best way. Now, am I going to drive 30 minutes to do a physical
Yeah.
class and pay a bunch of money?
Yeah.
That's where it starts getting complicated, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Even though in some ways like that is the best way for me to learn.
Mm.
Um, and that's why I think a lot of places have taken shortcuts, right?
Wait, here's a
They-
perfect example. Here's a good idea. This is a fantastic idea, actually. I just thought about
oh,
this.
we'll see. We'll see.
So you want to learn Japanese, and just like you said, the best way to learn Japanese is immerse yourself in it. So
Hmm.
why don't we make hearing aids we put in your ear that actually translate everything from English to Japanese if you want to learn Japanese? So then you can't hear English anymore, and you only hear Japanese.
Okay,
And then
so
it translates your Japanese back to English for the people you want to talk to in English, and it forces you to learn that language.
this is kind of like a funny Black Mirror episode, but I actually think that like that's one of the biggest things that's changed um in the past like 30 years, 40 years in Japan too, right? 40 years ago when people would go travel abroad to a country like Japan, if they wanted to talk to people from home, if they wanted to talk to people in English, they had to find a payphone, right? Pay exorbitant fees
Yeah,
to have the payphone do this sort of international thing. And
yeah,
otherwise, they just didn't have English. Nowadays, tons of people move to a country like Japan and they don't learn the language because they just finish work teaching English and then they come home and they watch YouTube all day, right?
yeah,
And they don't really need to know the language to survive, right?
yeah,
I actually kind of like this idea though,
yeah.
where you have a hearing aid that just like makes your life living hell.
Yeah, yeah.
um and
Yeah,
doesn't let you understand what's happening until you understand the language because I feel like
yeah.
the best way to learn a language is through survival.
Yeah,
Um
that's a
to
pinnacle
your
immersion.
to your point, yeah, and like when you live in America, like the amount of Japanese immersion is like nothing. So, yeah, oh, you might be onto
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that's our new product drop. Hearing aids that just make you hear in the language you want to learn.
Yeah, yeah. I need to think about this. That's cool,
Yeah.
actually. I kind of like it. I kind of like it.
This isn't supposed to be a real product. This
Well, I
feels like
don't
the
know.
product. This feels like a product that YouTuber would make. The one that makes like useless products. I just want to tell you, he's like a YouTuber. I feel like that. This would be the product he'd create.
I trust you. I trust you. But you know, like when you started, we talked about the hotel, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you want to get a person on the line because you
You
know
want
they
to
can
talk to a
actually
person.
solve that
Yeah,
issue.
yeah,
Um, sometimes the fact is there's a lot of people who like the AI could solve their issue, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And they just like I do want people to get over that idea that like they need to necessarily solve the thing with a human,
yeah.
but so
I
many
mean,
times we've had the experience where like the reason you're calling is because you've literally exhausted all the other things, right? Like,
yeah. Like, but here's my argument as to why I think customer service should never be replaced. Eh, the, if you're calling customer service, it's because you're upset,
yep,
right? And what we learned from the 7 habits, how do you handle somebody who's upset? You need to understand you need to feel like they're understand. You need to give them emotional air, right? And they need to feel like their problem's going to be solved. And AI just can't do that, right?
yeah,
It at least now, at least at this moment in time, AI can't understand how I feel. And so that's a problem is if I'm upset and I'm calling these companies with a problem, I want to talk to a person because I want to feel understood, you know? Otherwise I wouldn't be calling customer service. And so, it does depend because yes, there probably is some situations where I'm calling customer service and I probably will just want to talk to an AI because I just want my problem solved. I don't care how it's solved. But
can I tell you a story about this?
hmm,
I There was like a deal on like new iPhones, right? And we were looking at getting like a new iPhone, right? And uh when we purchased this, we had this thing where it was like, oh, if you choose your provider, right, then
hmm,
you save $30.
oh,
But the deal said in like small font that if you choose your provider, then this deal doesn't apply anymore because the
hmm,
providers have their own deals. So you know, you have to go and like deal with this thing otherwise. We would have saved
yeah,
more money by not choosing the provider, right? But the way that the website defaulted to was that you had to choose or you could choose a provider, right?
yeah,
Anyways, the whole point was we finished this deal, we bought the thing, and then we realized, wait a second, we weren't getting the savings that we thought we would because when we look online, it says that we're supposed to get like
yeah,
$70 off and we weren't getting
yeah,
$70 off. So I called the place and they're like, that's weird. We don't know anything about it. And then I talked to a person like, man, yeah, that sucks. Like, I think this is kind of stupid, but I can't really help you. And honestly, just talking to the person, having the person agree that it was kind of stupid.
Yeah.
I was like, whatever. Just talking to somebody and they agreed it was stupid.
Exactly. Sometimes you just want to feel understood.
Like at the end of the day, I was like, whatever. Like, this was still a good purchase. Even if we didn't get the full benefit that we wanted to get, we probably lost like $40. Like, not a big deal. And if that was an AI thing being like, well, sounds like that sucks. Like, I don't think I would have felt heard, right?
Exactly.
Maybe I would have. Who knows? Right? Maybe that was AI I was talking to. And I couldn't have told
maybe in the future you will, right? Maybe AI will understand you more than humans. But again, do we want that? Going back to taking away the human experience, I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's the end of this episode. Hopefully, it recorded. We had a little blip in the middle. It was a good episode. It was a good talk either way. So I guess it's not wasted.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, have a good night, and I hope it's you I'm talking to, and not some AI version of you.
I am Jesse. And that was our containerized conversation. I'm Jesse Caffarelli.
I'm Josh Warhurst. Have a great night.